Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really interesting question. What are people with significant wealth actually doing with their money when things feel uncertain?
Hmm.
We're aiming to look beyond the usual, the financial headlines,
Yeah.
trying to understand their real strategies, their priorities. We've drawn from quite a few interesting sources for this.
Yeah, it's definitely a crucial area. We hear so much about wealth and growth, but these uncertain times, they really shine a light on what truly matters to people. Security, impact, future planning.
Absolutely. And, I stumbled across this story, this anecdote that I think just sets the stage
No
perfectly.
way.
Yeah, a successful entrepreneur I know, she almost immediately decided to just delete all her shopping apps. Poof.
Oh, okay.
And then she took that money, the money she would have spent, and sent it straight to the hourly workers she counts on, her cleaner, stylist, trainer, people like that.
Direct support.
Exactly. And she also made a pretty substantial donation to a PPP fund, for protective gear for frontline workers. Her reasoning was just so direct. She said, it's hard to make a real difference right now with anything other than getting resources where they're immediately needed.
That really paints a picture, doesn't it? A
Mm.
proactive, kind of human-centered response. Less about abstract finance, more about, well, tangible help,
Yeah,
addressing immediate needs.
precisely. And that kind of leads us into our first major theme, which is this underlying focus on safety. It seems like the initial reaction for a lot of wealthy individuals, anyway, really mirrored those broader anxieties we all felt about personal safety, family well-being.
And what's interesting there is how that concern actually translated into specific actions.
Mhm.
It wasn't just worrying.
Right.
Some people took really direct steps, like sending quick money transfers to family members, just making sure
Mhm.
they were okay financially right now.
Mm.
Others were more focused on shoring up those, foundational documents.
Yeah.
Things like updating their wills or ensuring they had clarity on hospital access.
Ah, the practical stuff.
Yeah, the really practical but crucial elements of security.
And we also saw this significant pause on big purchases, big ticket items.
Absolutely.
Whether it was, a major real estate deal or maybe buying another business, the feeling seemed to be, hold on, let's wait and see how things shake out.
Which really highlights that aversion to uncertainty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even among the wealthy, maybe especially among the wealthy when the stakes are high.
That cautiousness, it just makes so much sense when you think about the scale of these potential investments.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Big acquisitions, they always carry risks.
Yeah.
And during unstable times,
Mm.
preserving capital, staying flexible, that becomes really paramount.
Which interestingly brings us to a trend that was maybe a little surprising. People deliberately holding significant amounts of cash.
Right. Not just in the bank either.
No, that's the thing. We're talking in some cases about people keeping noticeable amounts of physical currency at home, even in like small bills.
The thinking there, it seems pretty clear, is preparedness for disruption.
Yeah, like what if?
What if digital payments go down? What if supply chains get snarled? Having actual cash, physical cash, for small, essential buys, it offers this tangible sense of security.
Yeah.
It's a very direct kind of risk management.
It's a buffer, a real physical buffer. And someone put it quite well. I thought this was really telling. They said, it hurts to sit on cash when it could be working for you.
Uh-huh. You feel that opportunity cost.
But they said, I like knowing I can weather the storm without having to touch my long-term investments. You can really feel that tension, can't you? Between potential gains and just immediate peace of mind.
That quote, it really gets at the emotional side of financial decisions. Even for people with substantial means, it's not always purely about maximizing returns right now.
Hmm.
Psychological comfort, that plays a huge role.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, there's another group, right? Another approach we saw.
Hmm.
People who aren't necessarily buying now, but they are very strategically watching, positioning themselves for the future.
Yeah, playing the longer game.
They're keeping a close eye on potential opportunities. Real estate, the stock market, maybe business valuations, expecting that, periods of instability can sometimes create good buying conditions later on.
Well, it points to a longer-term perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And a pretty deep understanding of how markets tend to cycle. It's about having the resources, obviously, but also, crucially, the patience. The patience to potentially capitalize when things dip, when maybe others are forced to sell.
And what's fascinating, too, is that it wasn't all about financial strategy. We saw this really significant emphasis on, well, non-financial priorities, particularly spending quality time with family.
Ah, yes, the human element again.
Totally. One person shared this, and it just struck me. They said, you can't get time back, so we're spending ours with our kids, teaching golf, watching movies, just being present.
That just resonates, doesn't it? On such a fundamental level. I mean, regardless of your bank balance, the value of time, connection with loved ones,
Yeah.
it often just becomes clearer, sharper during challenging times.
So true.
It kind of underscores that wealth, ideally, maybe should provide the space, the flexibility to prioritize those parts of life.
Absolutely. Now, digging a bit deeper behind the scenes, there's also a lot of, let's say, less visible financial planning going on.
The quiet maneuvering.
Exactly. Wealth managers, accountants, attorneys, they're advising their high net worth clients on certain strategies. One key thing that came up was maximizing the lifetime gift tax exemption, doing it now.
Anticipating potential changes down the road.
Precisely, anticipating potential changes in tax laws. This lets individuals gift a really significant amount. Currently, it's up around $11 million, I believe, during their lifetime without triggering gift tax.
That's a fascinating example of proactive wealth management, isn't it? It's about looking ahead, anticipating policy shifts, and taking strategic steps today to optimize things for the future. Tax planning becomes just critical for long-term wealth preservation and, eventually transfer.
And then there's giving, which we touched on with the first anecdote, but it's a broader theme. And we're not just talking standard charitable donations here.
No, it felt like something more.
Yeah, acts of really genuine, impactful generosity. I heard about someone who gave, I think it was $20,000 to a PPE fund for healthcare workers, right? And they didn't even think about it for a tax deduction, just said flat out, people are dying. I'm not thinking about deductions right now.
Wow. What really stands out there is the motivation, isn't it? It goes beyond the sort of transactional giving, for the tax break. It feels like it reflects a deeper sense of social responsibility, a genuine desire to actually help during a crisis.
Exactly. And related to that, we're also seeing this kind of leadership emerge. Some individuals are actively encouraging their peers, others in wealthy circles, to also give generously.
Using their influence.
Yeah, the idea is to create a sort of ripple effect, a wider impact, inspiring bigger contributions overall.
That kind of peer pressure, or maybe peer encouragement is a better word, it can be incredibly effective. It taps into that sense of collective responsibility and honestly has the potential to mobilize substantial resources for really important causes.
Now, something that inevitably comes up when you talk about wealth during difficult times is, financial disparity, how different people's situations are.
Yeah, that's a delicate one.
Very. One person was grappling with this, how do you navigate that situation when you're financially secure, but maybe friends or close connections are facing real hardship? And the key things that seemed to emerge were, first, lead with empathy. Seems obvious, but critical.
Absolutely critical.
Second, ask genuine questions about their well-being, but questions that go beyond just money. How are you really doing?
Connecting on a human level first.
Right. And third, absolutely avoid any hint of boasting. No showing off. Keep it low-key.
That emphasis on empathy is just so important. It's about acknowledging the vastly different realities people might be living through and offering support, if you can, in ways that are meaningful but also respectful. Like we heard with that PPE donation, sometimes quiet generosity, without any fanfare is the most powerful.
So as we kind of start to pull these threads together, it feels like the core principles guiding many wealthy individuals through these uncertain times really boil down to a few key things. Protection is one, safeguarding assets, families.
Yeah, security first.
Then there's a focus on potential future growth, but through strategic patience, not rash moves.
Watching and waiting.
And finally, a real commitment to giving back, meaningful giving.
Protection, growth, and giving. And, these principles, that in many ways, they aren't exclusive to the wealthy, are they? They're pretty fundamental considerations for almost anyone navigating uncertainty.
That's a great point, precisely. And ultimately, what this whole deep dive kind of highlights is that the true measure of wealth isn't maybe just its accumulation, but maybe how it's used, intentionally, in line with your values, especially when times get tough.
Well said. Using it well.
It really does make you think. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Inspired by some of these approaches we've talked about, perhaps consider one small but meaningful action you could take today. Something to protect what's most important to you. Maybe it's your time. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe it's just, your own peace of mind. It really doesn't require vast wealth to act with intention.